Hi guys, what is up? Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another little like sit down coffee money chat with Carter. I haven't done one of these in a while and I'm super excited for today's video. Also nervous, also anxious. We're feeling all the feelings, which is totally normal because today's topic is not really a fun one, but I think it's one that we need to talk about, and it's one of those things that is very scary, but the more we talk about it and the more we educate ourselves on it, the more that we can do to be proactive. So obviously you guys saw the title. Today we're gonna be talking about preparing for a potential recession, simple financial habits you can do like starting today. And I also want to touch on inflation and then just like, you know, some tips and tricks on financial anxiety. So I'll put timestamps for you guys down below if you're just interested in part of this video. But if you guys are new here, hi, my name's Carter. I love talking all things money, lifestyle, getting through your 20s, unfiltered and raw, and just talking about those topics that no one wants to talk about. And that's what we're here to do today. And this all started because I don't know when the episode came out, maybe a month or two ago, but I listened to a episode of The Financial Feminist, which is a really great podcast. I'll link it down below. Tori is awesome. And I was starting to feel a lot of financial anxiety about a potential recession, and that's kind of like all that was in the news. And you know, sometimes these sources can be very fear-mongering or like political, and I really just wanted like an unbiased, just coach me through what to do, how to feel less anxious, how to like kind of take this potential recession and like get as ready for it as I can. And when I finished her podcast episode, instead of feeling like even more scared and anxious and confused, I felt very empowered, and I felt like, okay, here are the actionable steps I can take. And the way she talked about it was like in a very comforting and calm way, and I just knew that I wanted to film a video on it. So grab your coffee, your kombucha, your water. If it's the evening, grab your wine. These are stressful times. Sit down, put this on the background while you're budgeting, or just have it on, and we're just gonna sit and we're gonna chat. I'm gonna give you guys some tips, because for a lot of us, based on my age demographic, the last recession we went through was from 2007 to 2009, and we were all really young then. So for a lot of us, this is something we've never seen before, and we don't really know how to prepare and do. And as you guys know, I just like love to talk about money and things that no one talks about, and that's what we're gonna do today. So let's jump into it. I want to put a big disclaimer out there that I am of course not a financial advisor. These are just the things that I personally am doing to prepare for a potential recession. The goal of this video is to not fearmonger anyone. The goal of this video is not to scare you or stress you out, but it's to know that there are small financial habits that you can do right now that will prepare you for the worst case scenario. I obviously want to also disclaim that my tips will not apply to every person and every situation, because every household, every family, every financial situation for every person is going to be very, very different. These are just tips and things that I am doing that I wanted to share. Okay, sorry if the angle keeps changing. I have to pause because they're doing landscaping outside, and then start whenever the lawnmowers leave and like rush to film. So if the angles are changing, I am sorry. But first thing we need to talk about is, what is a recession? Like, how can we plan for a recession if we actually don't know what it means? A lot of us associate recession with like bad, scary, anxiety, but what is a recession? And when I heard what a recession was, it actually calmed me down a little bit. It made me a little less anxious, so I hope that this video can do the same for you guys. But a recession is a period of economic downturn spread across several months or years. I have like a whole document of notes, so if you guys see me looking down or over, that's what it is, because like I said, you really need to be prepared for this kind of video. This occurs when a region's economy declines over several months or even years. The region's GDP, or the total value of goods and services that it produces, will drop. Dramatic changes may occur in commodities like oil and gas. Previously profitable industries may suddenly become less valuable, and consumers may see increased inflation and higher than normal levels of employment. So those are kind of like all the factors of a recession smushed together. I'll have all of like my sources and stuff down below. And before we get into the tips for preparing for a recession, I wanted to take a minute or two to reassure you guys. And I wrote down a bunch of points. I was journaling about this a few weeks ago, actually, just because I was having a lot of financial anxiety. And just because I'm filming this video doesn't mean I'm not also financially anxious. Like, I just want to spread the little tiny bit of knowledge that I have and that I've accumulated after researching this to help you guys. But I'm in it with you guys, and there's little things that we can do now to prepare, and I want to reassure you guys and read you off some things I wrote down in my journal. First thing to remember, and the most important, is that recessions don't last forever. And according to Ally Financial, the average recession lasts 11 months. Also, very important to remember and very reassuring is that recessions are a normal part of the economic cycle. Like, the economic cycle cannot happen without a recession. We have to slow things down to offset inflation, which is what we're seeing right now, is a lot of inflation. Even though recessions are inevitable, it doesn't hurt to prepare for the worst, right? At the end of the day, I looked at it like, okay, if the recession isn't as bad as it seems, at least I took some steps to, let's say, add to my savings account or kind of cut back on my spending temporarily. Like, right? Like, you know, if the recession isn't as bad as we think it is, then hey, we've just improved our financial well-being. But if it is as bad as we think it is, then hey, we're prepared. So there's really no negative to kind of going through these tips and preparing yourself, because on the best case scenario, you know, you got a little more ahead. In the worst case scenario, you got prepared for a recession. You know what I mean? I want to say that it is extremely normal to have feelings of discomfort, anxiety, stress when we hear the word recession and talk about it, because it is just associated with a lot of negatives. Like, we talk about, you know, the 2007 to 2009, 2008 recession, like, all I think of is people losing their homes. Like, I have just a very negative association with it because that's what I remember being on the news. It's normal. Very, very normal. Okay, very normal. And it's not one of those things that is just like, oh, just change your mindset. No, this is a very big deal and we have to plan for it. All right, so here's some tips that I wrote down, and I wanted to keep them as simple as possible. Like, this isn't anything drastic that you have to go and do. These are things that you can do in your everyday life to prepare yourself, which is how I wanted to keep it, because I wanted it to be attainable. Like, I'm not telling you guys to go get a better paying job and save literally 90% of your income for the next 6 months and don't do anything fun. Like, I'm not going to tell you that. You know what I mean? The first one is not taking my money out of the stock market, which is the first thing I said when there was talk of a potential recession. And keep in mind, I keep using the word potential recession because we don't know when it's coming. We won't know that we're in it until we're in it. The first thought for a lot of people when we talk about a potential recession is like, I got money in the stock market, I'm gonna need to hold on to that, I'm gonna take it out. But remember, we're investing for the long term, not the short term. Although stocks may decline, and we can already see that in this quarter that the stock market has been on a bit of a decline. Historically, we know they're going to recover well. You can take the 2008 recession, and I'm going to keep referring to that because that's the most recent recession. I should actually correct myself that technically the COVID-19 recession is the most recent one, but that only lasted from February 2020 to April 2020. So I'm going to keep referring to the 2008 recession because that one technically started December 2007 and that one ended June 2009. So it was a bit of a longer one. Historically, we can see that stocks recover well, and it can be very scary. And like, I'm not going to lie, my first thought was like, I got to take the money out of the stock market now. But I was like, Carter, we're investing for the long term, you know, this is why we're going to do other things so that we don't have to take our money out of the stock market. But with that being said, you know, if you are put into a situation where you may lose your job, or you're not feeling so good about your job security, or you really need to cut back on your contributions, that is also okay. I'm just saying don't pull everything out. But if you need to talk to a financial advisor, if you need to lower your monthly contributions into your investments, or even put them on pause for right now, like, that is totally okay. I'm just saying, like, I absolutely have to. I'm trying my hardest to not take my money out of the stock market. But that being said, like, there's no harm in lowering your contributions. Let's say you invest $1,000 a month and you feel more comfortable doing $500 for now, or you might even pause it if you're self-employed and you just put money in when you have that extra income. That is also okay. Like I said, I'm not telling you guys what to do, but I'm just letting you know that there are, like, just because I say don't take your money out of the stock market doesn't mean you can't play with the amount you're contributing right now, if that makes sense. Next thing is, and these next two are kind of go simultaneously, but is to bulk up my emergency fund. I personally think it's really important to save as much as you can while you have the resources, just because you don't know when circumstances can change. And this doesn't even go for a recession. This just goes for normal times. Like, we literally don't know what's going to happen with our jobs, with our day-to-day life, like with whatever. So I personally think it's really important, like, while I have the resources and the financial circumstances to do so, that I am adding as much as I can into my emergency fund. You kind of hear in the finance world that the standard advice is 3 to 6 months of living expenses, which I think is a great place to start. I personally don't think the $1,000 that Dave Ramsey suggests, like, is gonna help anyone. I mean, sure, that's a good starting point, but you're gonna have to keep adding to it. Like, $1,000 doesn't even cover someone's rent for the month. So I think that if you don't already have an emergency fund, now is really the time to be prioritizing that and putting money into that. And with that being said, if you already have an emergency fund, there is no shame in beefing it up and adding to it. Obviously, everybody's emergency fund is going to be different based on, you know, how many people in your family, if you have any dependents, your circumstances, etc. But I personally am trying to boost my emergency fund as much as I can right now, and maybe try and get it to that 6 to 9 months or 9 to 12 months of expenses while I have the financial ability to do so. And with that being said, my third tip would be paying off any high interest debt. If I were, let's say, having a credit card carryover balance, let's say I had a credit card at like $5,000 and I couldn't pay that off in a month, that would be my ultimate priority after building my emergency fund. I would say like build that 3 to 6 months and then focus on the credit card debt, and then if you still have the financial ability to do so, is like beef up your emergency fund. But this is the time to be paying off the high interest debt, because, you know, that way afterwards you'll have a bit more of a disposable income and you'll have some more money to put aside back into savings or investing or whatever you want to do. But now is the time to pay off that high interest debt. Okay, the next one I want to be really careful with my wording on, but it is to just reassess my monthly budget. I think it's important for myself to look at places that I can save and temporarily cut back on. You guys know I don't believe in a restrictive mindset. Like, I'm never going to be like, okay, that's it, no spending for Carter at all, because that doesn't work with my personality. But I can look at my budget from a place of like, okay, temporarily, where could I cut back, if that makes sense? And I'm trying to be so careful on the wording on that, because I don't want it to come from a restrictive mindset. But there's things that I look at my budget that I'm like, these are nice and fun to do, but they're not necessary right now, and I'd rather put that money into my savings. And I want to say, for everyone, it's going to be different. You guys might see me buy books and think like, how is that a necessity for her? But if I'm not spending money on getting clothes or makeup or anything else that you prioritize in your budget, you know, it's just important to me. So things that I can cut back on personally, and you, like I said, it's gonna be so different for everyone. Mine is nails. I love getting my nails done. I view getting my nails done as self-care, but that is something that temporarily, you know, that's like $70 a month that I can save and throw into my savings, leave on my checkings to have a bit of a buffer, or invest that. For you, getting your nails done, you might have kids at home, and getting your nails done is like the only chance you get to get out of the house and have some self-care. So you might keep that in your budget and cut back somewhere else, like going out to eat as much, and that's totally okay. But that's why I say reassess your monthly budget personally, because everyone's is going to be so different. For example, Matt and I have just been eating out a lot less, just because with inflation it's just getting really pricey, and we personally don't think it's worth it. You might really love going to eat out. So I think it's very personal, and I'm not going to tell anyone what to do. And, you know, I think it is important to keep a little bit of spending money, but that's just a personal opinion. I don't believe in a restrictive budgeting mindset. And so I think it is important to keep up little things that make you happy, whether that's like going out to eat once a week or every 2 weeks, or buying books, or getting your nails done. Figure out what that is for you and kind of work with it. But you guys know I don't believe in restricting budget-wise by any means. Okay, and the last one I have is, now is the perfect time to start a side hustle or like a side gig. First of all, it allows you to have an extra stream of income, and it also allows you to have a bit of a financial cushion. That way you can keep saving, keep investing, or if you really don't want to cut back on your budget, it gives you that wiggle room to keep up that budget and that lifestyle that you want. So many side hustles out there. It doesn't have to be social media. I mean, TikTok is great. It has so many great side hustle suggestions, and I would suggest checking it out. And like I said, I'll have a few articles linked down below that I found really informative. I hope those tips were informative and helpful as well. I purposely wanted this video to be very simple. Like, you don't need to do anything extraordinary. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about super quick was inflation, because inflation and recession, or potential recession, kind of go hand in hand, because that's kind of the first sight that we see that a potential recession could be coming is the inflation. And we all know, everyone talks about inflation. Yeah, it's happening. It's life. One thing, once again, to remember is every household, every family won't be affected the same with inflation. Place to start is comparing your budget from last year to this year. Obviously, we're aware of inflation. We hear about it on the news and everywhere, but it's kind of what I saw referred to in an article as a silent budget killer, and it's kind of true. Like, it just kind of creeps up on you. And so you can do this with any length of time. I said 6 months, but that's like a lot of like going back to look at, but you could take like the last 3 months of 2022 to the last or the same months of 2021. So let's say you took June, July, and August of 2022, take June, July, and August of 2021, and kind of just see how your budget's been affected. Like how much more have you spent on food, gas, etc., just to get a comparison. It's not to make you feel bad or to, you know, be like, oh my gosh, I'm spending so much more on groceries, but just to give you an idea of where the inflation is coming from for you, because everyone is going to be so different. You might travel a lot for work, so your gas bill might be through the roof, but with that being said, maybe your groceries haven't gone up as much. For us, our groceries are the main thing that's impacted by inflation, and so it just kind of gives you a good idea of where inflation has. I also just want to say that one of the #1 tips, which is like so outdated, I personally think, is to just consume less. Like just spend less on groceries, just spend less on your household monthly essentials. And while like in the grand scheme of things that like makes sense to say, I just want to say that it's not just simple and easy like that to reduce or consume less in things like groceries or gas or household bills. Like those are essentials to your life and your lifestyle, and they're not necessarily easy to just reduce. Stella's literally stretching in the background, like homegirl's having a whole yoga session, and she wants to come join us. That's really fun. Do you think inflation has impacted you? Has your dog food gotten more expensive? Has it? Yeah? Don't mind Stella being here. She's probably just gonna, yeah, lie down and chill. Yeah, like you're gonna see like, oh, just consume less on the internet a lot. I think personally it's very outdated. It's like saying $1,000 is like perfectly fine for your emergency fund. It's not just easy and simple like that to like, oh, let me just buy less groceries for my family, or like let me just drive less. Like, okay, driving, you can drive less, but you know, oh, let me just reduce my energy bill. Like sometimes you can't reduce the essentials, and I just want to let you guys know that, because you're gonna see that tip floating around a lot. So I wanted to give you guys kind of 2 tips for battling inflation, just because I feel like the more you give, the more like overwhelming it can be. The first and the biggest way for us personally to reduce inflation, because inflation is personal to like your budget and your lifestyle, is grocery shopping. Now, like I said earlier, with reassessing your monthly budget, this is somewhere that people might not be willing to budge, and that is okay. That's 100% okay. Things that we're doing to kind of fight inflation, because I feel like that's where we see it the most. And I want to once again put a disclaimer out there that if you don't want to cut back on your groceries, that's totally fine. I'm not telling you that you have to. This is just what we are doing. This is like not the time to be buying organic or fun, like healthy snacks. For you, you might be like, that's really important to me, and I commend you for that, and like keep that in your budget. Cut back somewhere else if you have to. Like that's totally fine. But you guys know I love ordering from like the online like healthy stores and trying new snacks, but that stuff adds up super quick. It's super expensive. I can barely afford normal produce. Like this is not the time for me to be buying organic, in my opinion. We also try and keep it really simple, and you guys will notice that Matt and I stick to pretty much the same grocery list, and we just try and get like creative with our meals. We also bulk buy our meat from Costco, so we bulk buy our meat about every, I'd say 4 to 6 months. So we spend about a couple $100, and it'll last us about half the year. And we just kind of get creative based on what we have. We'll pull out some chicken thighs and be like, all right, what do we currently have? You know, barbecue sauce, great, chicken thighs on the barbecue. Or we'll take out ground beef and be like, oh, what do we have? Taco seasoning, perfect, we're having tacos tonight. We kind of just try and get creative and make a game out of what we have, instead of always feeling we have to buy more at the grocery store, try a new recipe, more. Also try and revolve our meals around what's on sale, and then we also price match with the Flip app. So those are just some simple ways that we're kind of trying to fight inflation, because we see inflation most in our grocery budget and then eating out, but we've just decided to stop eating out as much just because it's insanely pricey. And we actually don't find much joy from eating out, honestly. Usually after we eat out, we complain about how expensive it is. It's just like not something that makes us happy. We're very much experienced people, so I would rather like, you know, have him take me to like the thrift store and go like book shopping instead of going out for dinner. You know what I mean? But if you love going out for dinner, like go for it, and nobody's stopping you. These are just things that I'm doing. Once again, like we talked about with preparing for a potential recession, is just auditing your budget. Do you have unnecessary subscriptions? I think we all do. I have had Apple TV and Paramount Plus renewing every single month for like 6 months, and I haven't watched it, and I've been way too lazy to cancel it. Like now is the time to be probably canceling those unnecessary subscriptions, and I will be doing that after this video. Next is to just see, are you sticking to your budget? Are there places that you're going over consistently? Let's say you budget $200 for groceries, but you're always in like the $350 mark. Maybe now is the time to increase your grocery budget a little bit. Because if it's consistently going over, it means like you're probably spending more just because of inflation, right? Groceries, essential. I mean, I'm sure there's ways you can cut back, but I'm just saying it's also not harmful to maybe increase your grocery budget a little bit. If you budget $200 to spend on yourself a month and you spend $1,000, like that's a different story. Maybe we should cut back on the personal spending. But gas, groceries, utilities, all those things, like if those are consistently being over budget, maybe it's time to reassess and adjust your monthly budget. Adjust your spending goals. One big thing that I've started doing is, you know, not buying as many new books because they're pricier, and I always try and find the silver lining in situations as much as I can because I'm a very financially anxious person. And so, you know, instead of saying like no new books, only used books, I've said, you know, going to the bookstore is fun. Going to the new bookstore, but like Indigo or like, you know, wherever they sell new books is fun. But going to the thrift store is like an adventure. Like you never know what you're gonna find. You're kind of like treasure hunting for the books. And so I've kind of reframed my thinking. Instead of being like, ew, like used books, I'm like, this is an adventure. It's so fun. You get so much more bang for your buck, and kind of just like make light of it, find the silver lining, and readjust your spending goals like we talked about earlier, where you can and where you think you can temporarily cut back. The next and last thing is to just like negotiate your monthly bills. There's no harm in calling. I was always raised with the mentality that there is no harm in asking. The worst that they can say is no, and it's true. Like now's the time to call your Wi-Fi, your cable, all those companies, see if they can cut you a better deal, your phone bill, etc. If maybe you like pay $100 a month for 10 gigs and you only use like 4 gigs, maybe like get a cheaper phone plan. Little things do add up when it comes to your monthly budget. And last thing I wanted to talk about was financial anxiety, which we all go through it at some point or another in our lives. It is normal as a psychology major. Anxiety is your brain's natural reaction to situations that it perceives as like dangerous or unsafe. So anxiety in general is normal. Financial anxiety is also normal. But the thing is you don't necessarily always have the power and the control for the financial situation that gives you anxiety, but you do have control of your own financial thoughts and your actions. So you don't have the financial control to like change a potential recession, but you do now have the tips and tricks to prepare yourself and kind of reassure your mind that like, okay, we're gonna be okay. So here are some tips that have worked for me in terms of financial anxiety, and I thought this just went really well into this video because of everything we're talking about. So the first one is you're not alone. Sometimes I think like I'm the only person that's financially anxious in the world, and I'm obviously not. Like a lot of people are going through this. Next thing to do, which I know is like so cliched, easier said than done, but is to focus on the positives. And I don't mean like every day, all day, every day, but when I'm personally financially anxious, switching to a positive isn't gonna like magically fix your financial situation or your bills or your budget, but it will just help switch your mindset and calm your fears for a second. So if you are like, oh my gosh, there is a potential recession coming, like that is terrifying, what's gonna happen? Switch your mindset to, okay, worst case scenario, I have 6 months of living expenses saved up. If I were to lose my job, we will be okay, and I can find a new job. I have a network, I have LinkedIn, all these resources, and I will be okay. Switching it temporarily also helps me kind of forget about the negatives for a hot sec, and then I just focus on the positive, or in that case, I guess that is the positive. The next, which we've talked about so many times already in this video, is reworking your budget. When I'm personally stressed, I like to go back to the root of the issue, which is the finances and the budget. Check up on my finances, see where I'm at. Usually in my head, I think I'm doing worse off than I actually am. It's like, please, it is not something that you want to avoid. Please, please, please check up on your finances. It's very important. Next is educating yourself, reading articles, listening to podcasts, reading journals, etc. Educating yourself on finances is like one of the best things you can do. Also talking it out with someone. Matt and I are very open about our financial anxiety, and we love to communicate and talk about finances because finance is also one of the biggest disruptors in a relationship. And so usually every 2 weeks, every month, we'll have a financial check-in. We're usually on a walk with Stella and we'll be like, hey, how are you feeling about finances? Or we don't even have to be having a check-in for one of us to just be like, hey, I'm feeling a little anxious and stressed about finances. Like, can we talk it through? And it usually just helps to talk it through with someone. Also want to say that some anxiety is okay. I learned this in therapy, that some anxiety can make you more proactive. For me, at least, when I first moved out, I was super anxious about, you know, I was spending too much and I was really just anxious about my finances. And having that little bit of anxiety actually helped me flip the switch and be like, all right, we're saving more, we're investing more, we're getting smart with our money. And so having a little bit of anxiety isn't always a bad thing. It can actually be good to kind of kickstart better financial habits. I also love this, and I'm going to read it to you guys. It's from an article. It says, perhaps a better word for financial anxiety is actually respect. Although being anxious about the future is a passive way to deal with finances, actively respecting money and treating it with the proper care can help you plan for the future. And I just like loved that perspective. Next is, of course, breaking down big goals, which this doesn't really have to do with like a recession and inflation and stuff, but I find that I get really anxious when I look at a goal of like save $20,000. I'm like, that is a lot of money, and I am like not near that goal, which is why I like to break them down into smaller goals. So maybe I'll have 20,000 at the top of a paper, and then I'll break it down into like $500 increments and check off $500 increments every time I save. And that to me is a bit more empowering than just having that big looming goal. All right. Bottom line of this video is that we will get through this. Recessions, potential recessions are temporary. They don't last forever. There are things we can do to fight inflation, and there are simple things that we can do for our financial well-being right now to prepare ourselves. And I just want to let you guys know that I'm really proud of you. We're going to get through this together. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and it was somewhat comforting. I hope. I'm really nervous. I don't want to scare anyone. I don't want to fearmonger anyone. But I just wanted to share some of the things that I've been looking up and researching and thinking and journaling about, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have any tips for, you know, preparing for a potential recession, inflation, or even financial anxiety that I didn't share and you would like to share and you're comfortable doing so, leave it down below, because I love when we all just share resources and tips down below. It just makes my heart so happy that this is a very safe space to talk about those things, and maybe people can scroll through and read more tips and feel a bit more reassured. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.